Hi everyone, James here. I thought I might attach a newsletter to this video. Those of you that have been reading a while know I bang on about carcass balance quite a lot. The idea of us being left with lots of bits in the middle or at the end of a goat once it's all been butchered up, because some bits are more popular than others. And I was thinking about how best to explain this to people that don't sort of aren't used to butchery and the idea of selling meat and the concepts and all that stuff. And I thought about if you're trying to sell a car and somebody comes along and buys the boot and buys the engine, but you're left with the seats in the middle, that's what happens with us. We can sell a lot of legs of goat because we sell a lot of dice and a lot of shanks. We can sell a lot of shoulders and we can sell a lot of mince because we do burgers and sausages. But the bit that we struggle to sell is the middle bit, where you get the chops and the racks. The belly comes off, it gets minced and turned into burgers and stuff. So we don't have a problem getting rid of that bit. The bit that we struggle to sell, because you just get so many of them, are the chops and the racks. And I think part of the reason, especially the problem, is with the racks. And I think the problem with that is that it feels quite chefy, it feels quite restauranty. And I think that can make people think it's actually quite hard to cook and difficult and complicated, and it's not really the sort of thing I can do at home. So, I mean, I think that people can cook at home as well as you can in restaurants using the same sort of techniques. It's all about confidence and actually knowing where you're trying to get to when you stare at the product and think, what am I supposed to do with this? So this video is designed to help you cook racks at home and to show you that it's actually really, really simple. First of all, I'll show you what I mean by a rack. This is a goat rack. So this one weighs it was 875 grams, just under a kilo. And it's, as you can see, it's not cut. So you've got the whole rack here. Sometimes when we sell them in 4s. Sometimes when we sell them in 8s. It depends who did the butchery. So, and you can see that it has this nice line of fat down the outside. And that is, what it is the loin muscle. So if you think, on me, it's this bit here. So this is the spine of the animal ran down here. And the spine of the animal ran down here. This is the ribs, and this is the most tender and succulent piece of any animal. This is the bit that you get sirloin steaks from. It's the bit that you cut your pork chops from. So it's a really lovely piece of meat, and it cooks just like steak, as I'm going to show you in a moment. So what to serve with it? Personally, I think that, again, I want to prove to you just how simple it is to cook with this. You don't have to go overboard. It doesn't have to be anything particularly special. Personally, I think it's really nice with lentils, but what I've chosen to do here, lentils or beans or something like that, but I mean, the trusty potato is always at hand if you need it. So I've just sweated some onions here. They're just, regular white onions. I'm going to add some garlic to it. Little chef's trick here. Once you've chopped your garlic up, if you want to get it minced so you don't get bits of garlic in your food, once it's cut nice and small, put a little bit of salt on it and just squash it with the flat of your knife. And that is the sort of chef's trick of making sure you don't get big chunks of garlic in your food. Personally, I quite like big chunks of garlic in my food, but I know that some of the head chefs I used to work for were quite picky about it. So if you just mince it and then flatten it with your knife, you'll get some nice, see that? Those bits will almost like dissolve once they go in. So that goes into the onions, which I'm just sweating with a little bit of, just sweating those with a little bit of butter. And a little bit of oil. If you put a drop of oil in with the butter, it stops the butter from burning, and that's actually, it keeps the flavour of the butter nice and buttery rather than getting that burnt, nutty flavour that you get. Something else I would never have done as a chef. This is dried thyme, so I'm just going to put a bit of that in. My thyme bush in the garden is looking particularly sorry for itself, so there wasn't any thyme when I ran out. So just a couple of pinches of the dried thyme. And bay leaves. My bay leaf tree also isn't looking too happy with itself, but I'm sure it'll perk up once the sun comes out. So yeah, just break those in half to let the flavour release a little bit. And I sweated these down for probably 5 or 6 minutes, just so they're nice and soft before I started filming. I did that just before I started filming. So these are now nice and soft. And trusty potatoes. So you can do, all I'm going to do is cut these really nice and thin. I did do these by hand, but you can do them on a mandolin if you've got them and get them really wafer thin, but like that will be fine. So take them, drop them in the pan. So we'll get the last of those in, like that. Give it a bit of a stir, because you want to spread the onions through and the garlic and the thyme just through the potatoes so it's nicely mixed. Then go back in there for a bit. A little bit more salt. And we'll just let the heat in the pan just warm up the potatoes. So when it goes into the pot, it's all nicely hot and ready to cook down. So what to do with your rack? Like I said, sometimes this will come in 4, sometimes it will come in 8. If you do get an 8, then I suggest you just count down 4 bones and cut it in half. Really simple. So there you go. You've now got 2 racks, 2 4-bone racks. What I would do next, give them a good season. Before you cook them, if you've had them in the fridge, before you cook them, take them out about an hour before, let them come to room temperature. You really don't want to be cooking meat ever from fridge temperature. Give it a chance to get up to room temperature. And these little bits of fat here, we are going to use to our advantage. Something else I would never have done as a chef is using chicken stock from a cube. If we would have used chicken stock, we would have buckets and buckets of it in the fridge that we'd have made from our own waste chicken carcasses or bought them in and roasted them and made it ourselves. I don't mind using stock cubes, I think it's okay, but they are really salty. So always be aware when you're using them that if you're salting not to put too much salt in the thing before you put the chicken stock in, otherwise you may end up with it being too salty and there's no way back from that, unfortunately. So that is half a pint, half a litre-ish. I'm just going to pour that in there and let that sort of just cook out a little bit. Bring it up to temperature, and we will get started on the racks. I'll just move this around a little bit, put that back there, get it up to simmer. Now, cooking the racks. So, heavy based, Alex Pole, cooking pan. Put that onto the heat. You want medium heat there. We are going to use this, as I said earlier, we're going to use this this fat here to our advantage. So what we're going to do is render that fat out as it cooks, and then use the fat of the animal to cook the meat in. Really, if you're cooking meat, it was always best to try and use the fat of the animal that it's from. So if you're cooking a steak, try and render out some of the fat on the top of the steak to cook it in, because it just increases the flavour. So this should sizzle a little bit. There we go. Did you hear that? We're just going to let that just cook for a little bit. No real stress, no real hassle, no real rush. Just going to let the fat render. You can hear that nice little popping, sizzling, crackle sound. Now we're going to go back to the gratin. We're going to put it in a little Alex Pole pan. Very nice. Really, again, this is really, really simple and delicious way of cooking your potatoes. Try and pile all that in there. The only thing you want to be careful of is you want a sort of equal amount of stuff to liquid. So I think it's what St. John called the alligator in the swamp theory. You want what you're cooking just have its eyes poking out the top of the water. Alligator in the swamp. It's quite a nice way of remembering it, I think. So there is a little bit. We push that all down with the spoon. Probably just a little bit too little liquid in there. So rather than make more chicken stock, we'll just put a little bit of water in, and that will do fine. So I'll just pop that back in there. Oh, hang on a minute, this is starting to get a bit carried away. So we'll turn that down. Now you can see it's starting to smoke. That's okay. Just make sure you've got your smoke alarms turned off. Let's have a look at the other side of it. There we go. Starting to get a nice little brown tinge to it. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, I'll get the spoon out, the nice amount of fat in there that's rendered out. So we'll pop that back on there, just turn it down a little bit. And we'll put the other one in at the same time. There we go. You'll be careful when cooking stuff in a pan, you don't put too much stuff in the pan, because it will drop the temperature of the pan and mean that you're not at the right temperature for cooking the thing that you want, and things can go mushy and they don't have the crispiness that you want, so just be careful not to overcrowd the pan. And what I just said about smoke alarms, I'm just going to go and turn mine on. So here we go. So now we've got both of them in the pan, just with the racks pointing over the edge, because what you're really trying to cook is that. See, that's coming along really nicely now. See how this one's going? Yeah, there you go. And you've now got enough fat in the pan to really give a nice layer of fat for the meat's cooking, and also later on when we baste it, that will form the base of your kind of, well, you'll see when we get there. Let's have a look at this gratin. As you can see, that's just starting to bubble a little bit now. So I'm just going to put that in the oven. That should take about 35-40 minutes. Again, going back to cooking as a chef, we just had the ovens on full blast all the time. We never used to turn them down unless we were doing braising. But with this, you should have it on about anywhere between 200 and 220. Potatoes are pretty strong. They can put up with quite a lot of heat. Right. So back to the racks. Now you want to brown them all over. Okay. So this has now got a really nice colour on here, and it's got a really nice. Well, it's coming. The colour is coming on there. So I'm going to flip them over. And I'm going to turn the heat right up on that one. I'll move to this one so it's a bit closer. Turn the heat right up. And you can be quite aggressive with them, because again, what you're trying to do is get that nice brown colour across all of them. So there we go. You can turn it right up. Just hang the racks over, if you can see that. Just hung the racks over the side. And once we've got that at a nice high temperature and it's browning, pick them up. Stand them on their side just like that, so you get the actual loin gets a bit of a go. Don't worry if the bones look like they've got raw meat on them and you're worried about a bit of cross-contamination, because we're going to finish these in the oven, so that will get cooked out. So at the moment, when it can look a bit like, oh, this is all starting to be cooked, but up here there's still some raw meat. We're going to finish them in the oven, so that will go away. So we've now got a nice. That's it. There we go. You can now see that is all nicely browned there, it's all nicely browned underneath, and we're going to finish them off in the oven. So flip them back to skin side down, because again you want that layer of fat to protect the meat as it cooks, and there will be further rendering while it's in the oven. So these can just slide into the oven. The oven's on as hot as it will go at 220, and we should leave that for about 10 minutes. We'll check it after 8, but it should take about 10 minutes. Okay, so the racks have been in the oven for about 6 or 7 minutes now. It's time just to check, see how they're getting on. Remember, we're looking for the appropriate amount of doneness in the same way you would a steak. And you can have all the fancy kit in the world to tell you about the internal temperature of your steak or your rack, but the easiest way to do it is with one of them. So we take them, give them a prod, and what they should feel like, and this is the same with steak, is they should feel like it springs back. So it's the difference between putting your finger in a pillow and putting your finger in a mattress. With a mattress, you'd expect it to bounce back. And with a pillow, you'd expect it to stay where it is and leave that indentation. And the reason for that in the meat context is that as the muscle cooks, it starts to tighten, and the more, because the meat has got stress, it puts a stress on the heat puts a stress on the meat, and it tightens. And that tightness is the heat getting through the meat, and then it leaves it more solid than it was before, and you can feel that as resistance. It will bounce back. So with this one, this top one, because it's slightly thinner, that is bouncing back. So that one is more or less done. This one, because it's thicker, you can still feel there's like softness in the middle. So I'll flip that one over and put that one back in, but this one we'll take out. Just double check that. Yeah, that feels about right. We'll take it out and we'll rest it, and this one will go back in. Like with most steak, I think it's probably best medium rare. With the nannies, I think we probably want to push them to the medium end of medium rare, just because the texture is a little bit better. You want a bit, sometimes if meat is medium rare, it can kind of tear rather than be able to bite through it, and you want a bit of resistance, I think. There's nothing wrong with chewing, people. Chewing is how you get the flavour out of your food. I think it's we've been kind of led to believe that meat is all about texture, not about flavour, and personally I think it's about flavour and not texture. You want the gratin to be quite wet We're not going to have a sort of a gravy with this. We will have a bit of a sauce from when we baste the racks in butter, which I was going to show you in a minute. But you want something to wet the plate. When I was a chef, we used to talk about wetting the plate rather than putting a sauce on it, so it's really sort of swimming around. But you do want a little bit of moisture on the plate, so that's what the gratin will give you, just a small layer of almost gravy. Take a look at this. So you can see this is now brown, nicely brown all over. And just has a little bit of spring. The other thing that will tell you if your steak lay down a bit so you can see, you'll see that as you see it's now starting to leach there, and that is as it rests and contracts, the juices from the inside will start to leach out, and that's another way that you can tell that you've cooked it to sort of medium rare, which is exactly what you want. You can just see it starts to leach there, and that again, that'll happen during the cooking process. If you're cooking a steak and you're cooking it one side, then you flip it over, and you'll see if you keep it on the one side, you'll see the juices start to leach out of it. Again, that's as it contracts, it's forcing these juices out, and that means the heat has penetrated to the center of the meat, which is a sort of useful idea of keeping your meat to its doneness. So in order to speed this one up a bit, sort my cloth out. In order to speed this one up a bit, I flipped it over, so we've got it on the. Yeah, there we go. That one is starting to feel a little bit more done. Probably just needs another sort of 10 minutes, another 2 minutes. So we'll pop that one back in. Try and take it out. Should have a big sizzle when it comes out. There we go. So now you can see. You can see that's all nicely browned. Those, oh, it's going to get a bit warm. One more fold in my napkin. Those ribs I was talking about earlier on, that we were worried about them not being properly cooked, they're all now nicely cooked as well. So we're going to put both of these racks back in the pan. And now we're going to add some flavour to it. So turn your oven back on, nice and hot. Butter. There are two types of butter, no butter and loads of butter. There is no in between. That goes in there, eventually, that goes in there. Again, from my garden, a little bit of rosemary. You don't have to be too precious with this. You can just break it up, throw it in. Again, with some garlic. Don't have to be too precious about it. What you're doing is flavouring the butter and then in turn flavouring the racks. So, another chef's trick for getting into garlic really quickly, flat of a knife, bang, flat of a knife, bang, flat of a knife, bang. Really easy. And those can go in there. And then, and this is the really fun bit. Where's my spoon again? There it is. You put the racks at the top of the pan, move all of the butter and that buttery, fatty, garlicky, rosemary business, which tastes really delicious, and you baste. And all you do, I'm going to stand like this so you can see it. See that? All you do is just pour that over like that. And you get all of that nice flavour into the racks. So, you see that? You just keep doing that for a bit. Get loads of that nice flavour. Can do that again. See, and that smells absolutely amazing. That kind of goat fat, butter, rosemary, garlic flavour is really, really lovely. You might have just noticed I missed the pan with that bit, and it's currently decorating my drawers down there. Just give that a wipe for anyone notices. And now we can just leave that to rest. Resting is really important. It sounds like quite a chefy restaurant-y thing, but what you're allowing the meat to do is relax after the battering is just taken in the oven with the heat. And all those muscles that are contracted, that have pushed all of that meat juice out, they will now relax. So when you come to eat it, it will be nice and tender, and also it allows a kind of even heat through the meat, so you're not eating one end that's really sort of cold and the other end in the middle that's quite hot, and just evens it all out, evens the cooking out. and makes it even more delicious. So we'll leave that in there for a bit, just in that sort of flavoured oily butter, which is lovely. Don't they look great? I mean, they just really look great, don't they? Don't they look really delicious? That lovely brown flavour, that brown colour. And we'll have a look at the gratin, see how we're getting on. There we go. So, this is now starting to look nice, almost like shepherd's pie, doesn't it? Sort of that brown potato topping. We'll just give that a prod, see if it's done. Obviously, the thinner you cut the potatoes, the quicker it's done. And these were quite thin, so that is almost done. We'll just give it a few more minutes. And while we do that, I'll go and get some plates ready for you. So we've had a little 10-minute break, and that should have given us enough time to allow the gratin to have cooked and to have rested the goat rack sufficiently for them to be ready to eat. So again, just testing the gratin with the tip of your knife, that the potatoes are nice and soft. That is done. Put that over there. And as I said, the racks will have had a long enough rest to be nice, flavourful, and ready to slice. So that's that. That's how you cook the goat racks. They come in packs of 2. They're £9.50. Like I said, you'll get 2 individual ones, or you'll get one that is 8 bones long. If you just cut them in half, then you'll be able to do what I did. If you guys like videos like this, then I might do some more. So you can email hello@cabrito.co.uk, and that'll come through to me, and I can answer any questions you have on an individual basis. And if you like more videos, just let me know, because I'm happy to do them. Thanks, and thanks for your continued support. It means everything to us.